A warm welcome to the committee for Councillor Claire Hunter. Hope your stay's a happy one. This meeting's being recorded and the stream will be live on YouTube. If you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public who wishes to speak, please note you have a time limit of 4 minutes. You will be timed and I will confirm when 4 minutes runs out, but I have known to be lenient. You should finish when I ask you to or wind up quickly. Come to the microphone, which is on that table there, press the speak button and introduce yourself. And the same applies to anyone who wishes to speak in favour of the application. As chair of the committee, I've decided to vary the rules slightly, so you will have a little bit of leeway. And the applicant will have up to 15 minutes to make his points. And voting will be undertaken using the electronic system, and the outcome of the vote will then be confirmed by our legal officer, Dave, once complete. I'll begin with some housekeeping. If you've got mobile phones with you, please put them on silent mode. Thank you. Hand sanitizer and cleaning spray are around the building if you wish to use it. And people who do use the microphone, if you can sterilise the table after you've spoken, please. Thank you. We're not anticipating a fire alarm, so if the alarm does go off, it does mean there's a fire. And our exit is in the wheel room there, and we will gather on the grassy knoll. Okay, so the meeting is officially open. We'll do some introductions. I will start with the young lady on my left.
Charlotte Lynch, Democratic Services Officer.
Vice Chair of the committee.
Councillor James Flannery, Middleford Pemberton.
Councillor Phil Smith, representing New Longton and Hutton East.
Councillor Will Adams, representing Middleford and Pemberton.
Good evening, Stephen Brown, Head of Development Management.
Chris Lomax, Walton Dale East. Good evening.
Claire Hunter, Bamber Bridge East. Hello.
Gareth Watson, Camp Green and Gregson Lane.
Councillor Damien Bretherton, Walton Dale West.
Councillor Mary Green, Council for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Councillor Peter Molyneux, Sandbury and Walton.
Good evening, Councillor Harry Hancock, Broad Oak, Penwitham.
Good evening, Councillor John Hesketh, Longton and Hutton East, Hutton West, sorry.
Good evening, Janice Crook, Planning Officer.
Yeah, good evening, David Whelan, the Council's legal advisor tonight.
Okay, welcome everyone. Well, we have apologies of absence from Councillors Caroline Moon and Councillor Barry Yates, who have been substituted by Councillor Molyneux and Councillor Bretherton. Okay, welcome, one and all. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? Okay, no declarations of interest, good. If I can invite Janice to present tonight's item.
So the Pickering's Farm site is allocated for residential-led development under Policy C1 in the South Ribble Local Plan. This policy specifies that planning permission will only be granted for the development of the Pickering's Farm site, subject to the submission of an agreed master plan for the comprehensive development of the site, which includes the safeguarded land S2 and provides for a range of land uses, which includes residential, employment and commercial uses, green infrastructure and community facilities, together with a phasing and infrastructure delivery schedule and agreed programme of implementation. Additionally, Policy A2 at Criteria B specifies that a road is to be constructed through the site shown diagrammatically on the policies map within the plan period, i.e. before 2026. The background to the site's allocation is provided in the committee report at section 9 and relevant policies are set out in section 8. And this slide's just an excerpt of the local plan. So a master plan document, including an illustrative master plan, has been submitted as a supporting document to 2 outline planning applications. Members will recall a previous master plan for this site was refused by committee due to a number of issues. These are set out in paragraph 10.2.2 of the report, and this current master plan has addressed some of those issues, as highlighted on pages 10 to 17 of the submitted supporting planning statement document. For example, the orchard sites have been retained and there's a commitment to providing a number of bungalows. Section 10.2 of the report advises on the master plan. This slide shows the illustrative master plan, which indicates public open space, village green. If you just bear with me, I'll just try and change the pointer so it's... Can you see that? Yeah. So those are the orchard sites that I've mentioned before. So there's areas of public open space, the local centre, village green, school site, and a pedestrian link to Kingsfold. It also includes Spine Road. Section 10.3 refers to the policy requirement for a Crossbow link road, and although the master plan document demonstrates visually how a link road can be provided to the site, there's no firm commitment to delivering this key piece of infrastructure. LCC Highways have advised that the proposals do not demonstrate the delivery of the infrastructure necessary to support the scale of development proposed. It is clear that the wording in the local plan requires a link road to be completed in the plan period, and therefore the development demonstrated by the master plan is contrary to relevant policies. So 2 planning applications have been submitted. This is the plan for application A, which shows the areas subject to this outline with all matters reserved application. So all matters reserved except the principal means of access, and proposes a mixed-use development of up to 920 dwellings, a local centre including retail, employment and community uses, 2-form entry primary school, green infrastructure and associated infrastructure following the demolition of certain existing buildings. So you can see from this plan the areas edged in red are subject to the application and the areas in white aren't part of the planning application. So this shows the proposed access onto the A582 Penwitham Way. This access will be a traffic signal control junction and would serve the majority of the development. County Highways advise this access will serve 1,060 dwellings, the school and the local centre. 2 lanes will be provided on the site access junction arm to separate right and left turning movements. This access is supported by County Highways. So I've just tried to mark out the turning lanes on this plan. So these plans show the access arrangements for B Lane, a priority junction to serve 40 dwellings. So just zoomed in a bit, this plan demonstrates 2-way traffic and a pedestrian clear zone over the existing railway bridge. County Highways have concerns over the proposals for this B-lane bridge and do not agree that it's suitable for two-way movements and a pedestrian clear zone without any improvements, particularly as it's a constrained pinch point. Network Rail have also raised concerns. This is reported at section 10.4 of the report. So there's just some photographs here, some images of the B-lane bridge. This one is the approach from B-lane towards Leyland Road. And then this is a bit further on at the Leyland Road side of the bridge where there are some footpaths. And then this is a view from the Leyland Road roundabout towards B-lane. So County Highways have also considered the existing roundabout does not include a suitable, sustainable provision to satisfy future demand, nor does the junction support that required for additional vehicles in terms of design standards. Application B is also an outline application, with all matters reserved except for the principal means of access for a residential development of up to 180 dwellings, green infrastructure and associated infrastructure. Access to this site will be through the main development proposed under application A. The submitted transport assessment indicates that Flag Lane will only provide access to existing properties, but without an indicative layout or strategy, County Highways are unable to understand the impacts or acceptability on existing residents. So there are a number of issues raised in respect to the transport assessment by County Highways, National Highways and Network Rail. In addition to the lack of the Crossbow Link Road and B-Lane access issues, these are reported at section 10.5 of the report and include local junction modelling, AM and PM two-way vehicle trip comparisons, public transport and cycling and walking provision as some examples of where there is a lack of suitable information submitted. Vectos, the applicant's transport consultants, provided a response to the consultation responses from County Highways and National Highways, and this has been provided by way of an update sheet that you should have all received. These are just two excerpts from the transport assessment which show the existing bus stops in the area, and the second is the cycle routes in the area. There's a number of public rights of way that cross the site. This image shows these existing public rights of way, and the public rights of way team at Lancashire County Council have provided advice on improvements required to the footpath network. For example, upgrades into shared use paths. This is reported in section 10.6 of the report. In terms of cycling and walking, County Highways advise that there are no details provided to enable them to comment on how this provision suitably and seamlessly integrates into the local and wider environment. Excuse me a minute. So there's other infrastructure proposed, and this is reported in section 10.8 and includes land for a two-form entry primary school, a local centre with 2,500 square metres of retail, employment, a mobility hub, and a third space which acts as a flexible working space for use by residents and the existing local community. Green infrastructure is provided in the form of a community green space, laps, leaps, allotments, school playing fields, swales and flood management areas. The green infrastructure amounts to 16.09 hectares. A large swathe of the green infrastructure, known as the pylon corridor, has not been counted against the policy requirements and is shown now as sustainable urban drainage on the master plan. The only issue in respect of public open space is the lack of clarity regarding sporting provision, and Sport England have objected to the proposals, as the proposals will generate additional demand for sporting provision, and it's not clear how this will be addressed. This is reported at paragraph 10.8.25, and discussions have taken place between the applicants and Sport England, and officers are confident that these matters can be resolved. So the proposals include the provision of 30% affordable housing. Initially, Strategic Housing were concerned that there was no firm commitment to the required 10-year split of 70% rented and 30% intermediate provision. However, the applicants have confirmed their agreement to the preferred affordable housing 10-year split, and this is reported at section 10.9 of the report. So section 10.10 of the report deals with residential amenity and outlines the existing properties within the Pickering's farm site. As these are outline applications, there's no details of the proposed dwellings, and therefore an assessment cannot be carried out on impact. However, a building heights plan indicates that 2.5 and 3-storey dwellings will be provided. Any detailed design would need to be sensitive to ensure no loss of privacy or over-dominance to the existing dwellings. Section 10.11 deals with the character and appearance and describes the proposed character areas known as B Lane, Heart of the Lanes, the Urban Edge and the Penwitham Edge. Again, the detailed design would need to ensure that the existing character is enhanced. Ecology and nature conservation is reported at section 10.12 of the report. A phase 1 habitat survey was carried out and submitted, covering the areas shown white on this slide. Additionally, a number of other surveys were submitted: desk study report about badger, barn owl, bat activity and roost, breeding birds, wintering birds, red-crested newt and waterball. Biodiversity net gain has been assessed by Greater Manchester Ecology Unit, who are our advisors, and they advise that it's important to demonstrate 10% biodiversity net gain. Currently, the scheme shows just a 2% uplift. So this would need to be increased to be in line with the Environment Act November 2021, which comes into effect in 2023. In terms of trees and hedgerow, the existing orchard sites, as I mentioned earlier, are now to be retained. This was one point raised with the refused master plan. And the council's arborist advises that TPO 2021 number 2 is in force, and in line with policy G13, this should be adhered to. This slide is from the hedgerow survey, showing their locations and type. Greater Manchester Ecology Unit advised that there is uncertainty regarding the loss of hedgerows. The extent of the important and species-rich hedgerows is a material consideration in the determination of applications, and this lack of clarity over this matter is of significant concern to GMEU, but could potentially be addressed through the submission of a parameters plan securing the retention of those important and species-rich hedgerows across the site. GMEU provided an update confirming that there had been a mistake in the evaluation of the biodiversity net gain relating to the orchard site, and this has been reported on the update sheet. So section 10.14 reports on flood risk and drainage and the submitted flood risk assessment. This has been considered by the Environment Agency, the lead local flood authority and United Utilities, and no objections have been raised by these bodies. So the council declared a climate emergency in July 2019 with the goal of achieving carbon neutral by 2030. Environmental Health considered that due to the scale and duration of this development, it would need to be in line with the basic requirements of the NPPF for carbon reduction measures, such as ground and/or air source heat pumps, solar panels and water savings. These carbon reduction measures would need to be incorporated into any detailed design. So section 1016 advises on the submitted air quality assessment, which was considered by our environmental health officers, who advised that the air quality assessment methodology has been undertaken in line with the council's low emission strategy methodology. This has identified a damage cost on air quality for the development of £252,046. So although some mitigation measures have been suggested, these include standard requirements for all developments. So discussions have taken place, and this matter can be resolved with further appropriate and suitable mitigation measures. So in conclusion, members are being asked to make a decision on 3 matters tonight. The Lanes Master Plan submitted August 2021. Planning application A, outline planning application with all matters reserved except the principal means of access for the residential-led mixed-use development of up to 920 dwellings, a local centre including retail, employment and community uses, a 2-form entry primary school, green infrastructure and associated infrastructure following the demolition of certain existing buildings. And planning application B, outline planning application with all matters reserved except the principal means of access for a residential development of up to 180 dwellings, green infrastructure and associated infrastructure. And the officer recommendation is refusal for all 3 matters. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Janice, thanks for your detailed presentation. Right, I have 6 members of the public who wish to speak in objection to the application. First up is Mr. Mike Ball. If you'd like to come to the table, press the speak button and 4 minutes-ish.
My name is Mike Bow. I'm representing Keep Lane Rural. The VECDOS traffic assessment is deeply flawed. Rarely do you come across a formal document that appears so cynical, misleading, badly researched and brimming with indecipherable technobabble. For a damning catalogue of errors, I simply refer to the KBLR traffic review and the consultee responses from LCC Highways and Highways England. It beggars belief that VECDOS have completed a traffic assessment in the absence of any meaningful dialogue with LCC and Highways England, and without any agreement with LCC on the methodology to be used. This is exactly the same criticism levelled against Croft last time around. It is like planning Groundhog Day. To now submit a last-minute addendum in an attempt to clarify numerous misunderstandings in the absence of meaningful scrutiny is unacceptable. We suspect that the addendum is more smoke and mirrors. It is clear that VECDOS do not account for site demographics in their assessment and have grossly underestimated site trip generation, and assume the availability of local primary schools and other services will encourage walking, as if by magic, as part of their vision and validate aspiration. The only problem is that there will be no local primary school availability, little preschool and secondary school availability, and the local health service providers will be overwhelmed. This proposal positively encourages car dependency. This demonstrates a complete disconnect with reality on the ground. The complacency and lack of detail permeates the whole report. Notably, there is no road network map with traffic flow information superimposed at key positions for the main planning scenarios, so that the layperson can properly understand the impact of the proposals. Because the report is underpinned by errors in assessing the site fundamentals, the whole thing falls apart like a house of cards. The true impact of traffic generated from the site will be truly catastrophic, generating severe delays to the local road network, with journey times on key routes doubling at peak times. It is estimated that these delays will cost the local economy £5.5 million per year and will generate over 4,000 tonnes of CO2 per year and will further damage poor local air quality. And then there are the other elephant in the room issues, including the lack of master plan and infrastructure delivery schedule detail, the absence of a CBLR and the totally inappropriate two-way traffic and pedestrian flow on the B-Lane Bridge. The assessment completely fails to address these issues, although they were raised previously. So why the apparent refusal to recognise the concerns of the local population and their representatives following the first master plan meeting? You are left with the sense that the applicants feel entitled to behave this way, with their ultimate goal to appeal this decision, to bypass local democracy and to take full advantage of their ability to influence at high political level. This approach smacks of desperation, one last-ditch effort to provide life support to the failed city deal and its £100 million debt, resulting from years of mismanagement and incompetence. At least we can now rest assured that Boris Johnson has officially declared that we're not a corrupt country. I guess time will tell. These applications should be refused and we will prepare for an appeal. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ball. Thanks for that. We have a Peter Hambleton who's speaking in objection on Teams.
I do. Can you hear me, Chair?
Just about. If you could get closer to your microphone, it might help.
Okay, I'll try.
That's great. Okay, you have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I speak to you as a Bee Lane resident of 40 years and on behalf of Keep Bee Lane Rural. I would like to express the grave concerns of the existing community within the proposed development site. This area floods, not once in 100 years, not once in 30 years, but ever increasingly to a now annual event. To be clear, we are not just talking about waterlogged fields, but serious flooding of land and roads. The developers propose to raise the ground and completely reorder the site hydrology to mitigate flooding of new properties at the expense of existing lower-lying properties like my own. It is also proposed to increase the level of the footings on the new properties to negate the flood risk to the development. Imagine the height of a 2.5-storey building on raised foundations and raised ground, and the impact of that superimposed on this existing rural community. I have first-hand knowledge of the land and drainage. The ground is boulder clay and has very high water table, very little natural infiltration, and surface water drainage is via a network of ditches and culverts across the whole site, emptying into Millbrook and then into the River Ribble. The flood risk assessment does not take into account the tidal and flood nature of the River Ribble, and hence the backing up of the Millbrook tributary. I see it every winter. River Ribble high water, Millbrook cannot empty, water backs up, ditches and culverts spill out into saturated fields, causing ponding and widespread flooding of the land and the roads. Flooding which became much more prevalent with the building of the A582. The majority of Pickering's farm then became a basin, bounded by the West Coast Main Line to the east, Kingsfold to the north, and the A582 to the west and south. Pumping floodwater further along Millbrook is not a solution. It is outrageous that the flood risk and drainage assessment has been carried out on behalf of the developer. It should surely be done on behalf of South Ribble Borough Council and Lancashire County Council. I feel sure the outcome would be quite different and show this area is wholly unsuitable for a development on this scale. Full development of the site, even with SUDs, will lead to an exponential increase in rainwater runoff and flooding. Policy G17 design criteria for new developments, and I quote, should not have a detrimental impact on existing buildings or roads by virtue of its design, height, scale, plot density, massing or proximity. Increasing ground height by a minimum of 0.63 metres, and I notice there's no maximum given, to mitigate flooding of new properties would be overbearing and completely unacceptable to the existing community. In order to comply with National Planning Policy Framework, and I quote again, when determining planning applications, local planning authorities should ensure flood risk is not increased elsewhere. And yet the submitted flood risk assessment, Appendix 11, clearly shows the proposed northern flood basin and raised earthworks to the south of it will give protection to the new development at the expense of moving those flood waters further north and flooding Kingsfold, the playing fields and the community centre. If the developer insists upon a sustainable drainage and flooding system, then the issue and responsibility of flooding should not be passed on to the existing properties. And despite what Taylor Wimpey and Homes England tell you, there has been no personal consultation with existing residents that are not stakeholders. If they had, then I could have given them time-stamped and time-lapse photographic evidence of flooding on a yearly basis. That offer still stands, by the way, to developers and councillors. My summary is this. My property is one of many in Catchment B area, where it is proposed to significantly raise the ground to a minimum of 0.63 metres, with no mention of a maximum. Looking at the map in Appendix 11, the ground surrounding our properties is likely to be raised by 1 to 2 metres. This inevitably puts our properties at increased risk of flooding, and the environmental and visual impact will be severe. The proposed flood basin could be full in as little as 4 hours. A pump discharge system is simply not a sustainable system. Failure would be catastrophic. The Pickering's Farm site is landlocked with only one watercourse available for drainage, Millbrook.
If you could start tying up now, please, Mr. Hambleton. You've had over 5 minutes.
Okay, will do. The artificial earth berm is not shown on the master plan. However, the Maploy drawing at the back of Appendix 11.1 shows our property surrounded by raised earthworks. This is wholly unacceptable. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Mr. Hambleton. Do we have a Caroline Kay who wishes to speak in objection?
Hi, my name's Kaz Kay and I'm representing the Keep B Lane Rural Group. These developments, if passed, will have a huge and adverse impact on local environment and its biodiversity, with the loss of farmland and habitat affecting a vast amount of birds, mammals and invertebrates, adding to the massive losses the UK has already seen. For example, over 40 million birds have disappeared from our countryside in the last 40 years. Hedgehog populations, now considered to be less than 1 million in the UK from 30 million in 1950, and are still declining. So what is the biodiversity net gain of this scheme? Biodiversity net gain is defined as an approach to development that aims to leave the natural environment in a measurably better state than it was beforehand. The Environment Act of 2021 recently received royal assent, and a 10% uplift will be a requirement when the Act is brought into statute. This current scheme shows an uplift of 2% across the whole scheme for habitats, and Greater Manchester Ecology Unit would question some elements of this. Despite last-minute changes from the applicant, the scheme still only achieves a BNG of less than 2% and still far below the 10% that South Ribble Borough Council should be striving for as a minimum. It is strongly recommended that the local planning authority set a threshold of BNG to be achieved across the site, excuse me, which is higher than 2% for the habitat element. The lanes is essentially a vast network of ancient hedgerows that act as superhighways for wildlife. This application has little or no detail of which hedgerows are to be retained and which are to be bulldozed. The same goes for many of the ancient trees too. This is totally unacceptable and is not what is expected of master plan planning. This application pays lip service to ecology and should be rejected. As for the wildlife, if this goes ahead, what happens to them? For example, the average hedgehog range is 10 to 20 hectares a night, and it can roam up to 2 kilometres a night. Access between gardens is critical, not just for hedgehogs, but also other small mammals such as foxes, deer, weasels, field mice, etc., which are also regularly seen around the site. New developments are sterile with fenced gardens and roads that cut off animals from their normal habitats. On the day the diggers arrive, they run or they are ploughed into the ground. There's no removing them to a place of safety. Climate change is one of, if not the hottest topic of the moment. But here we are again discussing proposals that would see yet more green space disappearing under bricks and concrete, trees felled, hedgerows ripped out, a scheme that will introduce yet more traffic onto already congested local roads and cause of one of the world's biggest sources of greenhouse gases, with emissions rising every year. There must come a time when someone says enough is enough.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Do we have a Paul Schenko?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Schenko, and I represent Keep Lane Rural Group. I'd like to focus on educational provision. For all of this, LCC's analysis of the impact of the proposed development is considered to be deeply flawed due to systemic errors. They use a 2-mile as the crow flies radius to define the educational catchment area, and have not accounted, apparently, for the competing demand from other committed developments. They also seem not to recognise that social housing provision increases child numbers. Again, they also seem to ignore the impact of the development on the provision of preschool education, secondary education, and the development will likely home hundreds of preschool and primary school aged children. For example, in the respect of primary education, LCC claimed that 476 primary places are available from the 15 schools in the catchment. Yet, using a distance by road measure, 6 of the 15 schools quoted as being available are in fact closer to other committed developments. These committed developments will take approximately 190 of the available places. According to the ONS, the estimated average size of households in the Northwest with children in primary education is 4.03. An increasing number of dependent children is also noted in recent years. LCC used an estimated pupil yield of 0.38. Taylor Wimpey and the developers, the applicants themselves, indicate that the percentage of population in the proposed development aged 0 to 17 would be 15 to 20% with no underlying detail provided. Gov.uk data sources show that 6.2% of all people are between 0 and 4 years of age, and 5.6% are between 5 and 9 years of age. Overall, 21.3% of the population is aged under 18 and hence subject to educational requirements. LCC claimed that the primary demand from the development will be 350 places, but by using the previously referenced data sources and more up-to-date information, we calculate the true demand to be over 500. This results in an overall primary place deficit of around minus 150 to 200 places, and yet LCC claim a deficit of 8 places. Also buried in the applicant's documentation is a statement that they have agreed to pay for 6 places at a cost of £96,000. So let's put that into perspective. For 2021-22, Department for Education requires all local authorities to pass on at least 4,180 per primary school pupil. In South Ribble, the average is actually 4,393. Average class sizes in primary schools in the UK is 27. So therefore making a net cost per class per year of 118,000. For a 2-form school with pupil age between 5 and 11, this equates to a total cost of 1.65 million per year. Of course, that's just in relation to primary school places. We do, or we should, consider preschool aged children and secondary places. LCC themselves state in their education assessment of 17th of September this year, the county has been facing significant increases in the birth rate at the same time as capital funding from the Department for Education has been significantly reduced. So despite this, they appear to consider that the number of primary school pupils in local schools will drop between now and 2026, which seems a bit of a contradictory position. Separate to this, last main point, the siting of the proposed primary school would likely have a significant and detrimental impact on residents of the Kingsfell Drive and Bramble Court area. It's admirable that the developers want to encourage sustainable travel, but as noted by consultees, there is no guarantee of a shift of human behaviour. According to the Department for Transport, 46% of 5 to 10-year-olds are carried to and from school via car. And ironically, the main reason cited by parents is traffic danger. I therefore contend that vehicular traffic would increase in these residential roads. And, this is increased congestion, possible prevalence of inadvisable or unsafe parking and stopping, with all the safety concerns. So in summary, if these developments are permitted, they will have a catastrophic impact on local education provision and also result in other directly related adverse impacts for local residents. Chair, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Schenkel. Thanks for your presentation. If you can, yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. Mr. Graham Easton, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Graham Easton, and I too speak on behalf of Keep B Lane Rural. According to the government's own guidance on community master plans, they should be clear, easy to understand and accessible to all concerned. So my initial question is, why has this application and so-called master plan been submitted as 282 individual documents? Each one requiring downloading and assessing. At least the previous application was consolidated and in a format the local community could access and understand. Take the IDS, for example. For you and I, this is the infrastructure delivery schedule, probably one of the most important documents of any master plan. Yet this woefully inadequate plan is hidden as an appendix, number 6, of a supporting statement by Avison Young. One can only guess at the motivation for this change of tack, but if the plan was to try and hide the devil in the detail, then they didn't bargain on Keep B Lane Rural. Should you choose to refuse this application, we insist on a recommendation that any future submissions should be clear, concise, and easily accessible to all. After much scrutiny of the said 282 documents by our team at KBLR, we found them to contain a plethora of misinformation and vast swathes of missing or incomplete information. Where was the agreed master plan? Where was the Crossbow link road? We compiled several supporting documents to this end and passed these on to the planning officers for scrutiny. Surely such an incomplete submission is a considerable waste of very valuable resources for every consultee. But I think the real nastiness of this submission is demonstrated with the housing heights. Originally 2 stories immediately adjacent to the existing local residents, rising to 4 stories. This was rejected by the planning committee last time, and the applicant was told them to reduce them. So what did they do? Well, they reduced the 4 stories to 3, but increased the 2 stories next to the existing residence to 2.5. How unnecessary, petty and peevish. If this doesn't smack of arrogance and punishment, then I don't know what does. Liaising and consulting with the locals? I don't think so. On the 21st of September 2020, the applicants were given very clear instructions on what must be included in future submissions. I have the email here. It was quite straightforward, ladies and gentlemen. So now we're all left scratching our heads as to why such an incomplete set of documents that fails to address the majority of points listed still has been submitted with such short notice. Now, one could possibly understand the motivation of a developer trying to avoid financial penalties on the 10th anniversary of expiring land options. But you have to remember that this is a joint application with Homes England, who are a government body spending taxpayers' money. Does this application represent value for money for taxpayers, i.e. all of us in this room and everybody tuned in at home? Well, we have grave concerns, and our FOI team will be investigating this in due course. And we are particularly disappointed in the support of this application from Preston City Council. Given the profusion of concerns from pretty much all of the statutory consultees, it begs the question if they've actually taken the time to read it. And if they did, what the hell were they thinking? Whilst it may be the case that they need the SIL payments to prop up a failing, out of control, unaudited city deal, it should not be at the expense of the health and well-being of our community here in South Ribble. Without some checks and balances coming into play for the city deal, there will be a sky full of chickens coming home to roost soon. And if you're ill or want to drive to work or educate your children in this area, well then the best of luck with that. When this development was first proposed by these applicants in 2018 and Keep Bee Lane Rural was formed, we were told by the then administration to get used to it. It's happening. Well, Taylor Wimpey and Homes England, and indeed any other developers looking to cash in, we didn't get used to it. We appealed to the local community, and the local community chose to get rid of that administration. We are hugely grateful to this current administration and officers for asking the right questions, for listening to our investigations, and above all, listening to the local community whose lives have been blighted or will be blighted by this monstrosity. We accept South Ribble needs development and, more importantly, good quality jobs for our children. Pickering's Farm is just totally in the wrong location. Nothing about this site and the access is sustainable. It may have made sense in 1972 when the site was first allocated, but much has changed since then. Not least climate change, loss of green spaces and the associated ecology. And now the local plan needs to change to reflect this. We sincerely hope the new plan in 2023 will reflect the hopes and aspirations of this community. On behalf of Keep Bee Lane Rural, thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Easton. Thanks for your presentation. Do we have County Councillor Joan Burrows via Teams, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Joan Burrows. I'm the County Councillor for the division of Penwortham East and Walton Dale. And this outline planning application for this residential-led mixed-use development sits within my division. In addition to this fact, I would also like to declare that I live in a property on the perimeter of this proposed development. In fact, so close that if you took away my rear fence, my rear garden fence, I would be looking across Kingsfold Park at a part of whatever's proposed. Now, with my county council hat on, you will have read, and it's been mentioned, the Lcc findings. Just to summarise them, there's no demonstration that the infrastructure supports the scale of the development proposed. The authority's opinion is that there are a large number of concerns with all aspects of what's being presented, and therefore significant work is required before anything could come forward considered suitable. And unfortunately, the applicant didn't seek to speak to any of the authority's officers to gain or take up any pre-application advice. And the County Council has always been clear that they are available to work and advise with the applicant. Now, as a resident, the sheer scale of the development and the impact that it would have on the existing community and environment is overwhelming. I read in a newsletter that Homes England and Taylor Wimpey published and distributed to our homes in our community in August. It was stated that they'd consulted with local residents. All comments were considered and that they withdrew their outline planning application that was put before you in March so that they could reconsider the proposals and revise their plans, presumably taking on local residents' comments. Well, these plans seem to have come back with a vengeance and don't seem to have listened. 1,100 homes, a primary school, shops, community facilities, workspace and some green areas. It sounds to me that this is going to be a standalone town being created within a town that already exists. What consideration has there been of the existing community, our lifestyles and our connectivity? Bee Lane, Moss Lane, Lord's Lane, Flag Lane, all popular lanes for us locals to walk and have recreation time in idyllic countryside. Enabling this, we have 4 public footpaths, they have been mentioned. There's one off Sumpter Croft, off Queen's Court, Bramble Court and Kingsfall Drive. You know, previous developments, previous building taking place in past years have all emphasised the importance of access to this doorstep countryside, which is now wanting to be removed. This development will take that amenity away from us. There are lots of other concerns that we hear as well. Volume of traffic, air pollution, flooding. We've heard tonight the adverse effect on wildlife, and other essential facilities that aren't there. So, all relevant to the opposition of this development. Anyway, to conclude, I don't want it. My neighbours don't want it. The vast majority of residents in Penwortham East and Lostock Hall don't want it. You know, I would welcome the support of South Ribble Borough Council. You have a leader who made an election promise, and many current serving borough councillors who fought an election saying that they would stop this. So what I would say to you, you fought an election. You said you would stop it. People voted for you. So now, South Ribble Borough Council, stop it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, County Councillor Burrows. Just to put my point clear, I didn't promise to stop anything. Okay. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to speak in objection to the application before we move forward? No, okay. So let's speak to some borough councillors then, and I will bring in. Or are there anybody in support of the application? Any members of the public in support of the application? Okay, I'm going to bring in some borough councillors now. Councillor Paul Foster, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to County Councillor Burrows for reminding everyone that I objected to this last time, and she supported it last time. Obviously, it's really pleasing to see that there are a number of
excuse me, Councillor Burrows, I haven't invited you back in.
There are a number of councillors, Chair, changing the views now, which is really pleasing because it's only our community that can benefit. Colleagues, Chair, thanks for the opportunity to quickly speak to you on the applications. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as leader of the council, but also my 2 colleagues, Councillor Carol Wooldridge and Ian Watkinson from Sharnett Ward, that unfortunately, Chair, due to the COVID, can't make it here tonight. Some have said historically that I'm not permitted to speak about planning matters. Well, unfortunately, I am. I'd like to start by congratulating all the members of Keep Bee Lane Rural for their passionate and detailed submissions, as always, in regard to this flawed application. Chair, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions, as an administration we are pro-development, as the borough clearly needs commercial, employment and residential developments to thrive. However, development must be appropriate for the local authority, but also appropriate for the local community. Let's all just dwell on that for a moment, colleagues. Appropriate for the local community. The reason we are all here as elected councillors is to represent our local communities. It's singularly the most important duty we undertake. I do not intend, Chair, to comment on the specific details that the officers and statutory consultees have presented in respect to the clear recommendation to refuse the applications. However, the recommendations are clearly demonstrably right for all the reasons stated within the papers, and our officers should be commended for such a thorough, detailed review and report. Thank you. Colleagues, this matter was initially debated last year with the committee providing numerous pages of comments and recommendations for the applicants to consider. The applicants have failed to address any of the material issues raised by your committee, failed to address the material planning considerations, failed to develop and deliver an acceptable master plan, and failed to engage with the local community. How can such a major development wholly fail to engage with the local community? A serious flaw, I would suggest a very serious flaw. Where, Chair, is the approved master plan as required within our local planning policies? Where, Chair, is the link road? The Pickering's Farm development proposals in front of you all are wholly unacceptable. The infrastructure challenges Penwortham, Lostock Hall, Farrington and Leyland will experience if this was approved would be catastrophic. Our community will be blighted for generations. The environmental and ecological damage on this particular site would also be catastrophic, not to mention the serious flooding challenges the site poses to any individual living in the local area. None of these have been addressed. The question is, why have they not been addressed, Chair? It's either because they can't or won't, or perhaps the developer just isn't concerned. As I mentioned earlier, I am pro-development, but only if the development is appropriate. This is clearly not. And just because a site has been allocated provisionally within a local plan, this doesn't ultimately mean that any or all plans should then be approved. Chair, members of the committee, on behalf of our local communities, on behalf of our future generations, I urge you to refuse these applications. Please stand up and be counted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Foster. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Janice, for a comprehensive report and presentation, and good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Walton, representing Farrington East and all the residents who live in my local area. Planning permission for the master plan for the lanes was considered by this planning committee in September 2020, but was refused over concerns including highways, infrastructure, ecology, drainage, air quality, and many other number of other issues. In my opinion, the new master plan has not addressed many of these issues raised at that meeting. The proposed master plan does not put forward the construction of a link road across the site. Policies A2 and C1 of the South Ribble local plan require a link road to be completed in its entirety, to be an important route and to act as a link road to serve new developments, improve east-west travel across the borough and to help traffic flow on existing roads. The master plan as presented does not demonstrate the delivery of the infrastructure necessary to support the scale of the proposed development. The master plan relies on the existing highways of the A582 and the B5254 Leyland Road. The expected increase in the volume of traffic from the proposed site will likely have a considerable detrimental effect on the capabilities and safety capacity of local roads, which are already heavily congested due to them being the preferred routes to the motorway link, avoiding traffic hold-ups experienced on the A582. The potential exposure to existing and future residents of such an increase in slow and idling traffic will have an impact on the whole local area, but especially in the air quality management area of Lostock Hall Gate, which already suffers from one of the highest levels of nitrogen dioxide particles monitored in the borough. The results of such an increase in volume of traffic has the potential to cause even poorer air quality that will result in a substantial detrimental effect on the health of residents and impact on all the national health services. The main access to the site would be onto the A582 via a signal junction, but would not reduce the already congested and gridlock road, which often brings the whole area to a standstill at peak times. Already there has been committed developments or plans for developments for over 2,000 dwellings within the local area, all accessing the same local routes without any infrastructure improvements, resulting in increased traffic problems. The only other access for 40 dwellings is proposed to access B Lane over a narrow West Coast mainline bridge via Priority Junction to emerge on the B5254. This access would also cause great problems for the many pedestrians and cyclists who now use the access now. The traffic would then have the option of turning north to Middleford, east via the Causey or south to Tordygate, and all of these routes are heavily congested. We should be removing traffic, not adding to the already congested roads, and providing infrastructure or alternative routes to address these problems. The developers have proposed a strategy of encouraging residents to use active travel initiatives such as public transport and other means of sustainable travel. This might include a regular 30-minute bus service through the development from Pemberton Way. But with the increase in traffic, this has a potential to impact on the journey times, as delays are expected on the congested roads, and so will discourage this use. The master plan includes the building of a 2-form entry primary school, but until this is completed, most of the local primary and secondary schools in the area are oversubscribed or will only provide limited places, so will narrow parental choice and drive demand further into the borough. The lack of educational places, including nursery and preschool places, will inevitably impact on the local road infrastructure. There are many issues to consider for this application, but the impact of climate change and the potential detrimental effect on air quality due to the lack of infrastructure necessary to support the size of this proposed development need to be considered carefully, and I ask members of the Planning Committee to consider this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Walton. Do we have Councillor Carol Wooldridge, the ward councillor, on Teams?
Yes, thank you, Chair, you do. My apologies for not being there tonight, and I am on video. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Wooldridge, if you'd like to make a presentation, 4 minutes, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the residents, Keep B Lane Rural, for their eloquent and very passionate speeches tonight. I know how much this means to them. I know how much time and effort they've put in over the last 3 years. It's not often I agree with my fellow councillor on Teams, Councillor Burrows, but on the things that she has raised tonight, yes, I do. I do need to declare an interest. Sorry, I should have done that before I started, because I'm also a local resident and I'm a member of Pemberton Town Council as well. It will impact greatly on us as neighbours to the site. But I don't think anybody's mentioned tonight about the residents who are already living on the site that's going to be a building site. I did raise this when it came to the meeting at Pemberton Town Council. I didn't really get a reply from the developers who were given a presentation. When I said, according to their numbers, their initial delivery would be 30 to rising to 150 homes per year, which meant that the impact for the existing residents living on the building site would be a minimum of 7.3 years and could be up to a maximum of 36.6 years. I can't imagine living on a building site for 18 months. Well, actually, I have lived on a my first home was lived on a building site, and that was horrendous. Those people are going to have to be put up with noise, dust, machinery, dirt. It's unbelievable. You couldn't imagine what it's going to be like. The second thing that I raised with them was the fact that, oh, sorry, I've lost it now. Right, B-Lane, health and safety of pedestrians. That hasn't come up tonight, and I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but B-Lane isn't wide enough for 2 cars now and pedestrians. As other people have said tonight, it is used, and it has been used even more during the pandemic, for people to walk with the families, cycle, take the dogs for walks. I can't imagine what that's going to be like if you try to get two-way traffic down there and pedestrians, and the impact that it's going to have on people's exercise ability and just their well-being to get into the countryside. We really do need to think about that very carefully as well. I also asked them when they came with the presentation that if the dualling didn't happen on the 582, which at the moment isn't happening and in the foreseeable future won't happen, did they still intend to carry on with the development? And the answer I got was yes. That was it, yes. Councillor Burrows said before about building a town in a town. I think they're building a cul-de-sac because there's one way in and one way out. And it's just not feasible for it. So I don't want to waste any more time because I know committee need to make their decision. And I think everybody else has raised anything else that I may have. Thank you for your time and thank you for letting me speak, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Wooldridge. Do we have, yes, Councillor Keith Martin in person.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who's spoken so far and for the presentation of the report. It's been very time-consuming as well as interesting, so thank you for that. The issue we have with the site is the site's not sustainable. It just creates a commuter town. There's no employment near the area. I mean, it would be great if an area, say in Salisbury, was developed because obviously there's employment there, but we don't know about that yet. So this isn't the answer for that. We can't expect people to travel all around the world to get to here. Hedgerows have also been mentioned, and I won't repeat that, but they are very important to the environment. Flooding. Millbrook takes most of the water from Kingsfold. We as ward councillors over the years have worked to try and keep this clear, only to be let down by the A582 and the tiny culvert under there. The landowner who owns the land between the 582 and Friar Close is already putting in mitigating actions to try and raise his land to stop it flooding. So with this development, this will just compound that by adding flooding to the Friar Close estate. It was been acknowledged by Lancashire County Council at 2 meetings, one of the climate leads for districts and at the Parish and Town Council conference, that climate is an issue. Temperatures are going to increase and create a lot more rainfall. So we will see the regular floods as well as, and these will be compounded by additional flooding, which is not good for the environment either. The traffic is going to be a huge issue there. The failing of the city deal to put in adequate provisions. I mean, the 10 years is nearly up now, which is what we were promised. There doesn't appear to be any dualling going on. They're still begging for money to do that. Again, let down by the A582. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Matthew Trafford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm one of the councillors for Lost to Call, by the way, in case anyone didn't know that. I find myself speaking with a certain level of disappointment, really. I find it disappointing that once again I'm speaking before Planning Committee, having to plead with the Planning Committee to reject an application which I am convinced poses an enormous threat to the physical well-being of the residents who are my boss, the residents that put me here. I'm disappointed as well at the level of unnecessary and avoidable anxiety that's been caused for the people who are already living in the area that we're talking about. And I'm disappointed, and as extraordinarily impressive the work that they've done is and how organised and disciplined they've been is, I'm disappointed that so much of their time has had to be given up to sort of to put right many of the arguments that are so blatantly misleading and so easily contradicted. The thing I'm most concerned about, which I think is clear, is the issue of air quality in Lost-to-Call and Tardygate. The phrase air quality, by the way, a phrase that Vectus didn't even bother including within the addendum. They couldn't even bring themselves to use the term air quality within that. So what we're actually talking about with air quality is something that kills between 28 and 36,000 people a year. It can lead to heart diseases, strokes, lung cancer, it exacerbates asthma. This is something that's extremely serious. So with the knowledge that air pollution in Lost-to-Call is an air quality management area, meaning that the pollution already breaches national standards, would approving an application with so many red flags in relation to air quality be a risk that's even worth taking? Professor Paul Cosford, who used to be the Director of Health Protection for Public Health England, has made numerous references to how reviewing infrastructure in relation to planning applications is an extremely important way to try and prevent dangerous levels of air pollution. So rejecting this application would actually be quite a good opportunity to heed that advice. So what I'm asking is to trust the evidence-based being an extremely important point in this, the evidence-based local knowledge, and to take this opportunity to make it clear the types of applications that we will accept and the types of shoddy ones that we're not willing to accept. So that's enough from me, and thank you for the time, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Trafford. Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening, colleagues. Can I first of all begin by thanking the South Ribble officers for what is a very detailed and very good quality report that has been presented. Can I thank the members of the public that have spoken and done a lot of the work behind the scenes as well. And the majority of the consultees that have given submissions. I won't comment on Preston's submission, but thank you to all the others that have submitted their views, and thank you to Highways England and County Highways, and County Council Boroughs is input in that as well. I've never sat on the planning committee at South Ribble, but I've always taken a course interest in planning matters, and I've almost never seen an application come forward with so many reasons for refusal that are being set out by our officers. 11 of them, with the addition of the 2 extra ones, and all of them make a lot of sense. It's almost quite staggering that some of the, given that this came to committee, about 14 months ago now, I'm surprised that bigger efforts haven't been made by the applicants to actually improve the applications that are before us. I am totally staggered about the master plan not coming forward for approval first. I'll comment on that in a minute. But enough said. But I do support the reasons for refusal that are set out by the council's officers, all 11 of them. But just expanding on some of them in particular. Highways, and I thank County Highways for a very strong submission. They clearly don't support this. It's clearly not been demonstrated that the proposed development would not have a severe adverse impact on the local highway network, which would roll out across South Ribble, and that proposal is contrary to many of our planning policies. The master plan, which I've touched on, policy C1 of our local plan means that a master plan must be agreed for this site before the site comes forward. It's not been agreed. It was rejected 14 months ago. It's not been brought forward for approval since. There's no design code for the comprehensive development of the site. We've not had a submission of a phasing and infrastructure delivery schedule. or an agreed programme of implementation. These are all contrary to policy C1 of our local plan, colleagues. Moving on, the Crossbow Link Road, which is talked about. So the two applications, together with the master plan, which is included in here to support them, do not provide a firm commitment to the delivery of the Crossbow Link Road, again, which is necessary to support the scale of the development which is proposed on this site, again, contrary to the council's planning policies. And the final point I want to pick out is the inadequate information which has been provided to address air quality impacts, as Councillor Trafford has just referred to, and insufficient mitigation which has been identified to make the development acceptable, again, contrary to our proposals. So yes, this council is pro-development, and yes, all the councillors who were members of the council, 8 years ago now, approved unanimously, and we did approve it unanimously that this site be included in the local plan, but that doesn't mean to say that any potential development coming forward should be supported. Clearly, what's on the table before us here this evening are not capable of being supported and should not be supported. So I wholeheartedly support and endorse the officer's recommendations for refusal and would urge colleagues to refuse the applications this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Green. Congratulations. 10 seconds left. Do we have any other borough councillors wishing to speak on this application? No, okay. Do we have the applicant or the applicant's agent and Mr. Mark Phillips of Homes England here? Good evening. If you can keep it as close to 4 minutes as you possibly can. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Phillips and I'm a Senior Planning Manager at Homes England, one of the joint applicants. I would like to start by saying that South Ribble Council is one of the most important local authority partners for Homes England. Having worked with the council over a long period of time and given the presence of so much of our land in the borough, we have benefited from a long-standing and excellent collaborative relationship, having worked together over many years to support delivery of your local plan, even appearing at examination in public together. This successful collaboration has further translated into delivery, where we have a strong track record of bringing forward many large and smaller sites, including, for example, at Brindle Road, Altka Lane and Crossing Road South, as well as helping to support the delivery of the Walton Park Link Road. Homes England has invested a huge amount of resource and capital into the borough, totalling £8.8 million to date, generating over 1,000 new homes, of which around 200 are affordable, with off-site contributions being made in lieu of on-site delivery where requested. A total of 330 homes of those 1,000 have been built to date. With regards to those sites I've mentioned, Homes England's approach has been to work within the council's adopted policy, where we have sought to deliver high-quality placemaking. We have also been able to facilitate the payment of significant developer contributions. As you know, we are a City Deal partner. No other arrangement exists with government that is the same as your deal. Homes England has 11 sites in the deal, and we are contributing £37.5 million of grant funding and associated developer contributions into the deal. This investment is helping South Ribble and the other partners to deliver a range of much needed infrastructure to support economic and residential growth, which will be of benefit to both the existing community and new residents. This is a unique and successful delivery mechanism that is held up as a good example of partnership working and delivery within Homes England and government. With regards to the Pickering's Farm site, Homes England has substantial land interests alongside Taylor Wimpey. We are the housing delivery arm of government, and the government is currently dealing with a national housing crisis. There is a wide range of benefits that the development will deliver. These include up to 1,100 new homes, 30% of which will be affordable, a new primary school, a new local centre, extensive green infrastructure, including new allotments, amenity space, natural, semi-natural green space, which will support delivery of the council's ambitions on green networks, and new job creation, including 275 construction jobs per year and 346 full-time indirect supply chain jobs per year, just from development on Homes England and Taylor Wimpey's allocated land alone. The site has been allocated for many years and is a key site in the adopted local plan. Homes England and Taylor Wimpey are committed to working collaboratively to bring the site forward, as well as ensuring we collectively set some strong placemaking principles at this outline stage. We do appreciate there is public concern, but Homes England is committed to bringing this site forward and delivering the best possible development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Mr. Phillips. Do we have a Gary Holman from Avison Young wishing?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. My name is Gary Hallman. I'm the agent for the applicant, Homes England and Taylor Wimpey in this case. You've just heard from Mark Phillips, who has emphasised the partnership approach that Homes England seeks to take with councils such as yours, fulfilling its mandate from government to help deliver the new homes that the country so urgently needs. Their alliance here with Taylor Wimpey, one of the country's leading national house builders and a winner of many housing awards, is second to none. It's a powerful one, and we hope that the council welcomes this for such an important housing site. We have submitted a comprehensive and highly detailed package of information to the council for this major proposal, which, as you know, seeks to deliver up to 1,100 new homes, of which 30% would be affordable. The officer's report is lengthy, and in the time available to us, there's no prospect of responding to the various points made, both for and against the site. But I want to just highlight 6 points to members, which I think are material to your decision-making tonight. First, as has already been said, the site is allocated for housing development in your up-to-date local plan. It's a statutory allocation, not as a provisional one, as one of the previous speakers said, and it's underpinned by the Central Lancashire Core Strategy. It is therefore, members, a committed development site which has been found acceptable for development and in a sustainable location. Realising this potential is fully consistent with the Borough Council's own strategy. And I have to say, those who oppose this in principle either fail to recognise that or choose to ignore it. It would be wholly inconsistent with the Council's own approved local plan to oppose this land's development in principle. It is a plan-led proposal. Secondly, this is an outline application with everything reserved for the Council's subsequent approval other than means of access, and Mr Axon, who will speak after me, will address that, which we know and understand is a contentious topic. Thirdly, the scheme will deliver 30% affordable housing, and the applicants have confirmed their agreement to the split of 70% for rent, 30% for intermediate housing, in line with the Council's policies and wishes. And the officer's report confirms there is a pressing need for new affordable homes and argues that this should be given significant weight in your decision making. Fourthly, the mix of housing is not for decision at this time because it is an outline application and that's reserved. But we have indicated and confirmed that there will be a wide range of houses, from smaller first-time buyer properties to larger family homes. Fifth, a master plan has been submitted as part of this application, which demonstrates how the application site would fit into the wider plans for the allocation, which includes additional land outside the applicant's ownership or control. The officer's report, importantly, confirms that the council has taken legal advice and that there is no necessity for this master plan to have been approved prior to this planning application being considered. 6, it's clear from the officer's report that certain issues, despite being suggested as reasons for refusal, are readily able to be resolved. It is simply a matter of agreeing appropriate financial sums and securing these in a Section 106 planning agreement or conditions. Those matters are included as the open space commuted sum and also education. If I might just in the last minute, Chairman, pick up on one or two further points that were raised in previous speakers. Air quality was one matter. This, in your report, the Environmental Health Officer says that the submitted air quality assessment is acceptable and to the borough's own methodology, and it's a question of agreeing the mitigation figures or confirming the £250,000 payment. He doesn't raise any objections on that basis. Open space I've mentioned. Flooding was also raised. There is no objection from the Environment Agency, and the Council's local lead flood authority raises no objections either. There is no flood risk. But education, the County Council have carried out their own assessment. They are the statutory education authority. We rely on their assessment and modelling, and they have told us what they require, which we're happy to provide in the Section 106 agreement. Members, in conclusion, it's clear that there are differences between the applicants and the council in how this site is to be delivered. But delivered it must be in order to provide a continuing source of housing that the borough needs, and specifically the affordable homes that are so urgently required for those in housing need in the borough. This is a high quality, carefully conceived scheme which, if approved, will deliver multiple benefits for the borough. And I hope members will recognise this in their consideration of the proposals. Chairman, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Mr. Holman. Janice, would you like to make any points? No? Yes or no? Do you want to add anything legal, Dave?
The only comment I would make, Chair, is the last speaker referred to the legal advice we received over the whole question of the master plan and whether it should have been approved in advance or not. What our local plan says, it should be approved. The point is, though, if the master plan that had been submitted as part of this planning application had been fully fit for purpose, then to refuse permission on that grounds would have been weak. But as you've already heard from the planners, they do have concerns with the contents of the master plan. It doesn't address all the concerns. So that as a reason for refusal is still a valid one.
Okay, thanks for your advice, Dave. Okay, and we have Mike Axon or Paul Whitaker of Vectos.
Yes, that is right. Good evening. I'm Mike Axon. I'm Managing Director of Vectos, a design council expert and a transport planner. What I've got to say is this. In 2019, the council declared the climate emergency and set out an ambition to become carbon neutral by 2030. Surface transport is the biggest emitter of carbon in the UK. To achieve the council's climate ambition, whilst at the same time designing for much needed housing growth, requires a positive, wide-ranging approach to transport. The council sets that out in its climate emergency action plan. It expects and designs for much more active travel, shared travel, and a reduction in commuting. That's what it designs for. And the council realised this in allocating the site. The uniqueness of the site is its size and location. It's the best site for accessibility and transport in achieving the climate ambition with the growth ambition. This is not a comparison of development against no development, but development here or development in a different way. Transport is about accessibility, and accessibility now is a mix of digital and physical. We consider accessibility now across the entirety of the day, because this is what matters most in terms of two key strands in the NPPF, climate and health. That is the vision and validate approach. And this has changed from when we used to focus on driver convenience in the commuter peak hours. We still consider that. We have here, but it's no longer the priority. And the oft quoted phrase is that it's not the purpose of planning policy to protect the convenience of the car commuter. So we have quantified the benefits of the size and location of this site in terms of local living based on industry standard data without any assumptions about changes in attitudes, because most day-to-day activity in general, for going to school for instance, is undertaken locally. But our team uses the principles of the master plan to maximise and accentuate those traits, and we'll commit to those through legal agreement, as Gary mentioned. For instance, we're talking about a primary movement network being the active travel network, alongside which there may be roads. There is excellent active travel connectivity and permeability with the existing communities, and those will be upgraded because this site will form part of those communities. We've included day-to-day land uses. We've got a network of mobility hubs with community concierge, shared travel systems, which include but are not limited to buses, IT platforms for car share and carpooling, a micro-consolidation centre as part of the mobility hub, and third places, effectively work hubs, to take advantage of the greater tendency to work from home and the council's encouragement of this trait. We have designed improvements to the B Lane Leyland Road junction to better accommodate active travel, something that was actually mentioned earlier, and facilitate better connection to the old tram line. And we have a series of design options for the B Lane Railway Bridge. We also got design options for the junction that you saw earlier with the A582, but either in its current state or its proposed dual state. And independent road safety audits have been undertaken for all of these. Now, the local plan policies, and I heard this mentioned earlier, do not require this scheme to deliver the CBLR in whole or part, and the CBLR is not required for the application to be acceptable. However, what this scheme does is it doesn't prejudice the CBLR, and through design it ensures that where it crosses the site, it fulfills the dual function of place of movement, as it should. Now, we've built the most sophisticated traffic model that now exists in the local area to enable junctions to be made about effect on traffic. This microsimulation model covers 12 hours of the day and has been independently audited. A predict and provide approach to modelling has been roundly abandoned by guidance. That has been replaced by the vision and validate approach, and this model allows that approach to be considered. Vision and validate, for instance, allows for assumptions, including the well-known assumptions of peak spreading and mode shift in response to changing inconvenience. It allows for that. However, the results of this model do not trigger the need for such assumptions to be included. For instance, for the strategic journey, if I can use an example, between the A59 and the M65, M6 junctions, the change in journey time across the day, say between 8 in the morning, 6 in the evening, as a result of delivering the entirety of the allocation, not just the application, fluctuates between 20 seconds and say 1 minute 10 seconds southbound, 25 seconds and about 3.5 minutes northbound. Typical differences being about 30 seconds southbound, 1 minute 20 seconds northbound, and those are largely due to adding a new junction onto the A582 rather than the change in traffic.
Yeah, could you start to tie up now, please?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Therefore, there is no meaningful traffic effect, but we've identified substantial benefit to climate and healthy living, and that's necessary to achieve the council's stated ambition. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. That's everybody who wants to speak in favour of the application. I am now going to open to committee, and we will not take any further considerations off any members of the public or the applicants. And if there is any heckling, we'd prefer you not to. Okay? We'll keep it nice and smooth. Okay, I have Councillor Flannery wanting to speak, Councillor Adams wanting to speak, Councillor Hesketh wanting to speak, Councillor and Mrs Green. So I'll take them in that order for now. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks everyone for your contributions tonight. Not that I wanted to be here on a Monday night, but the issue is so important. But I've been making my own notes, I've read the report, and as we always do on planning committee, we always listen to this different sides, because that's the only fair way of doing it. But I've made my notes here, I'm thinking, what is the objective here? I started looking at the representations from the people in the community. I'm thinking, well, why are we putting these people through this again? Why is there further uncertainty and anxiety in our community? So these people in our community, not in the community of people who say, come here tonight and say things like, we'll make a contribution, £1 a sign in terms of we'll do it anyway. Well, actually, it wasn't so long ago that the master plan for the site was refused 14 months ago. Phil tells me here it was 14 months. And what we see tonight is 2 outline planning applications with the supporting refused master plan as part of the document pack. But then I'll just quickly go through the report. That's all. It won't take too long, Chair. There are significant objections. You've heard people speak tonight, councillors, members of the public, people who feel very strongly about it, but it's not without significance. When you read the report, the statutory and non-statutory consultees have got concerns. We've got traffic. I have heard someone say air quality is not an issue. It is an issue. Go and stand by the junction of the site now, the entrance, in terms of traffic and issues which are faced there now, never mind with over 1,000 homes being built there without the infrastructure. But then I go on to read the reports with comments such as, and these are comments which are being objective in our report, insufficient information, lack of pre-consultation, challenging timescales. The application has failed to resolve the Crossbow link issue, lack an agreed comprehensive master plan. And it goes on further to say, little quotes, little cues which give me some indication of what's going on here. Lack of detail, significant concern, I am not satisfied. So when, sorry, I know Mark spoke from Homes England first, when the chap from Avison Young says or challenges the idea that the people don't want it, they've told you they don't want it, but when respected councillors stand up and give a clear indication, fully backed by evidence, that the reasons why, I think you need to pick your fights. Because if I had a master plan which had been refused, I wouldn't be coming in here being so arrogant, as arrogant as what I thought you were. But I've also, when Mark spoke from Homes England, I've just read up there, Homes England is an executive, non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And on their website today, the champion of the project in another area where it says the key priority is infrastructure. So I'm just wondering why this is not a key priority for our area. The traffic assessment wasn't good enough. It still isn't good enough. There's no clear consideration for residential amenity. For people who don't know what that means for the people who live in the area. And as Councillor Wooldridge said before, they could be living on a construction site for over 10 years. Which again, as we've always said as councillors, we've all said it, our residents do come first. The definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing but expect a different outcome. I think there's a bit of that in this. When you look at the comments last time, I think other colleagues have mentioned it, there was quite clear instruction last time to go away and think or look or consider this. I don't think that is being taken on board. As a minimum, what should have happened tonight is the people who spoke, Mike, Peter, Caroline, Paul, Graham, they should have been speaking and saying, well, look, they've come and they've tried to improve this, but they didn't. They spoke further against you. So the minimum you should have been doing is speaking to the people that matter most. And they're the people, your neighbours, the residents who live there. Therefore, Chair, looking at these 2 outline applications, I think they've failed to meet the policy requirements, and therefore I propose refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you to officers firstly for the detailed report on the presentation this evening. I came to tonight's meeting with an open mind, as we always do. After this committee raised significant concerns last time, and having lived in the area for 30 years, I know why such concerns were raised. After reading the report in depth and listening to all the speakers who have spoken so well this evening, I have to say I'm very disappointed with the application. In fact, I'd actually even go further and say this application is quite insulting to the residents of Penwitham, Lostercall, Barrington, and also this planning committee. This committee raised serious concerns last time. They've largely been ignored. No public engagement and very little engagement with all local authorities. The words lack of detail is consistent, Chair, throughout this report. This development could have, if accepted this evening, have a major impact on the lives of residents currently there and potential new ones. How dare you not give that detail? I've got a few concerns of my own, Chair. I won't go through all of them. I do agree with all of them that have been raised in the report, but I just want to raise a couple if I may. I do agree with LCC highways, and it's not often I say that, Chair, I have to say. Network Rail and residents in relation to Lane Bridge. It's a bridge that I often use, having a walk through the area, and I can say this will put residents at risk. Nobody on this committee can disagree with that. I also agree with National Highways and LCC highways regarding the sustainable provision of traffic on Leyland Road. Any resident on Leyland Road in Penwitham and Lostercall will tell you Leyland Road is busier now than at any other point in history. Air quality is getting worse. Residents deserve better, and it's affecting their health. Where I will disagree with Lancashire Highways is the idea that another junction on the A582 is appropriate. The reason Leyland Road is so busy is because it's quicker to get on Leyland Road than it is on A582 getting to the motorway. This just isn't sustainable at all. This application encourages car dependency, as the residents have said, with not enough thought for walking and cycling routes and even transport links. The applicant has failed to mitigate the serious concerns raised by residents and statutory consultees, and this will negatively impact the health and well-being of residents in Penwitham and Lostercall. Collaborative and partnership were terms used by the applicant and the agent. I see no evidence of this. Where I do agree with the applicant and agent is that we need more affordable homes, absolutely. But that's not to the detriment of current residents or potential new residents who deserve sustainable and healthy communities. Due to the serious reasons set out in the report and the issues that have been raised so well tonight, this application is not fit for the future. This application shows a total disregard of the environmental and health impact on current residents, never mind potential new ones. I am very much pro-development. We need better standard of housing. We need more affordable housing, but it has to be sustainable. Chair, I have to say, I've never been so against an application as I am with this one. The total disregard, the lack of detail, it makes me furious, Chair. It really does. For my residents who I represent. So I'm very happy to second Councillor Flannery's proposal for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think we need to rant on this evening. I think that the committee here can deliberate quite easily on what the outcome will be with the report, and many objections from the general public and so forth put forward this evening. There's only one way that we can vote, and that is refusal, Mr. Chairman, and I'll go along with the other two speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, thank you, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not hide the fact that at the last meeting last year, I was wholeheartedly in favour of deferring this application, because I always feel
like giving everyone a fair chance. And I felt that this application could be improved greatly by them working together with the officers and the planning department at this council. There were many objections in that application, mostly as we've heard tonight, and I don't want to repeat it all again, but main things are traffic issues, air quality and pollution, the ecology of the area being affected by flooding, and most importantly, the impact on the existing residents and their amenity and their way of life. And of course, the important issue of the lack of provision of the Crossbow link. The education seems insufficient for what we've got in that area, so thereby striking up the fact that traffic will have to travel here, there and everywhere to take children to school, etc., which again exacerbates the problem of traffic and pollution. When I received this report, I was quite interested in reading it and finding out all the new adaptations to it from what had been produced last time. And I read it through with great interest, come here tonight and listen to everyone. And unfortunately, I've not heard any improvement or any attempt to alter this application in any way for the betterment of the residents. So I'm very disappointed in it, and I'm very disappointed in the developer. I wish to thank the officers, because obviously it was a very big report to produce. A lot of work's gone into that, and I appreciate that. Thank you for everything that you've done on the planning department. But I too feel that this application, the developer hasn't shown any inclination whatsoever of working with residents or the council or anybody. So I too feel with a heavy heart that this application, I feel, should be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mrs. Green. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There are so many reasons to not like this application and not support this application. So many reasons that members of the public have already mentioned. But just to be clear, there's the beginning of the paper, there's two applications, and we were talking about earlier on about 3 votes here, and the first vote being, I'm assuming, which is the lack of agreed local plan. That is absolutely fundamental in our local plan. It's fundamental in everything that we do. And the lack of an agreed local plan for me, you just wonder whether we should be even looking at the applications themselves, the 2 applications, because it doesn't conform to our local plan. Therefore, we almost shouldn't be even hearing them and looking at them, I would have thought. But here we are, it's here in front of us. And certainly I don't agree with some of the things that have been said, but it does not agree with the local plan. Therefore, we can't agree with the application itself. I am certainly for refusal. First of all, because it doesn't agree with a local plan. And second of all, for the reasons that are in the officer's report. There's 9 reasons on page 88 of the report, and there's 2 further reasons on page 161 of the report. The report is considerable in detail from our officer's point of view, but lack of detail from the applicant's point of view, and therefore I can't support it, but I would support refusal because first of all it doesn't agree with a local plan, the master plan, and certainly doesn't have an infrastructure development plan. So for all those reasons and the numerous reasons that have been come forward this evening, I would support refusal. I would support all the officers' recommendations for refusal, both the 9 on page 188 of the report and the 2 on 161 report, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Smith. I have Councillor Watson and then Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Chair. Reading what the developers have brought forward tonight, it seems there's been a lot of effort made to not really make any effort to address the issues that they've been asked to consider previously. And in honesty, with so many reasons to refuse the application that we can see presented by the officers tonight, I don't see how we can come to any other conclusion. And frankly, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Donoghue.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank the people from Keep B Lane Rural, because I thought they did a really good job. Very eloquent. And all I can say is everything I've heard tonight makes me go for refusal as well.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Donoghue. Right, anybody else wanting to speak on this application? Councillor Mulliner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, a great deal has been said this evening regarding this matter, and it is true that this site's been down for development for several years now. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept an inferior planning application just because of that. The master plan presented this evening, it doesn't anywhere near meet the requirements I would expect to see, nor has it been agreed, as been stated on a number of occasions, and therefore this evening I'll be voting for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mulliner. Right, so apart from I've had a proposal for refusal and it's been seconded, have we got any other proposals from members of the committee? If not, we will go to the vote. So, Dave, if you can just explain what the vote is for. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. I think as Janice explained in her presentation, there'll be 3 votes tonight. That's the proposal. The first vote will be for relating to the master plan. You've heard the comments from the planning officers and the concerns they have about the master plan. In particular, there's the provisions relating to the link road and the general lack of information from support of highway proposals. But for all of those reasons, the officer recommendation is that you should not agree the master plan. And then we'll have 2 other votes, one for application A, which is for the 920 dwellings, and then the other for application B, which is for the 180 dwellings.
So just to get this right, we're doing 3 separate votes.
Yes.
First one, master plan.
Yes.
Second one, application A. Second, application B.
That's right.
Okay, so if we can go to the vote on the master plan, please, and this is for refusal. Okay, Dave, if you'd like to confirm that vote.
Yes, Chair, that's a unanimous vote for refusal, not accepting the master plan.
Okay, and secondly, on application A, again, this is the refusal.
Yes, Chair, again, that's unanimous, and just for the sake of clarity, that's for the reasons set out in the officer's report.
Okay, and finally, ladies and gentlemen, for application B for refusal.
Yes, again, Chair, that's unanimous refusal.
Okay, so that is the end of this evening. The application has been refused. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Due to COVID, can we leave in an orderly fashion, please? If you do have masks, I'd advise you to put them on. All right, thanks very much indeed for your time, everyone. Good night.